Carrie or Andy we need to do first? No?
Got it.
Okay, super. All right, so in the next few seconds, you'll see, go ahead, Tarina.
All right, I've sent it, so you should have a notification on your screen to be sent to a breakout room. If you don't,
That jumps in here.
Hi, y'all.
Hello.
good evening.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, so it looks like we've got
Familiar.
Hi.
hey everyone. Looks like we've got everybody in here. So my name is Jake Potter. I'm with the City of Livermore. And so just kind of like we just discussed, we're kind of going to go through a few things. First, we'll start off with some introductions generally, and then we'll move through kind of the 4 questions, and then summarize at the end. And we will be selecting someone to report out from our small group to the main group. So we'll select that individual at the end. So I'll just be thinking about that and who may want to do that. So again, Jake Potter with City of Livermore, and we also have Carrie from PlaceWorks here with us. And what we'd like to do first is just kind of go around the room, and if you'd be comfortable stating your name and maybe the neighborhood you're from, or generally, where within Livermore you're from. So I guess we'll start going around on my screen, at least I believe. Bill, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Okay, I'm Bill Leach. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I'm associated with Valley Concert Chorale, Sons in Retirement, Encore Players, Livermore Library, a few other organizations, sit on a number of boards and so forth. We've lived in town here on the south side for over 40 years. And I could not figure out as a latecomer how to chime in and put all my thoughts down on the last round. But I certainly have envisioned what I think the city, what I'd like it to look for in 25 years.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got kicked out.
Oh,
Do
That was
not
sure
know
quick.
why that happened, but we are going to put you back in your small groups.
I'm sorry about that. That is my mistake.
Hold with us just a sec. Sorry about the interruption.
Okay. I'm opening once again.
All right. Sorry, everybody, about that. Looks like we are back into our small group. I think we just heard from Bill. So thanks, Bill, for that. We appreciate your coming out. To the next person on my screen, I believe, Patty, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us.
Sorry. So I'm a resident in the north side of town in the Springtown area, and we've been here for 27 years. And I'm very active when it comes to outdoor activities, but also the arts. Broad interests and lots to do here in Livermore, so that's why I'm participating.
Great. Nice to see you. Thank you, Patty.
Mhm.
I think next on my screen is, I believe, GM. I think you may be muted there.
There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah, the G stands for George, so I answered either George or GM, either one. I'm retired. I'm was a consultant for FDA regulated companies and in general quality system regulations, including aerospace and automotive industries. I've got quite a bit of experience in doing things like this PlaceWorks company is doing now, so I recognize the process that they're endeavoring to follow. My own interests now are in, I would say, generating a common goal in the community. I see a lot of, I don't want to use the word diversity because that's natural in any community, but I see a lot of one-sidedness, and I see it promulgated both in, if you happen to be watching or reading Next Door Neighborhood or the letters to the editor in the local paper. There's just strong opinions that people are not able to come to common ground on. My lifelong well, not lifelong, but my professional career was involved in bringing different viewpoints together. And I've tried to do that on Nextdoor, but with very little success. I think one of the major things that this general plan needs to address is how we bring these differing viewpoints together and have a process for doing that. So everybody feels that there's a compromise position that's being brought forward, not just a one-sided viewpoint. And forgive my long-windedness, there's a joke that goes around that, a consultant is working because his lips are moving. And so I'll stop mine now.
All right, thanks so much, GM. We appreciate that. Next on my screen here, I see Larry, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, my name's Larry Goslin, and I've been in the Tri-Valley since 1981. I am not a citizen of Livermore right now, although I've been a citizen in the past and coached by 3 of the former mayors to stay engaged with Livermore politics. And also by 2045, undoubtedly, I'll be a resident again. That being said, I am remarkably active with the open space that people are eager to continue to see in the valley and to see flourish. I'm on the Agricultural Advisory Committee for the County of Alameda and work on quite a few conservation as well as agricultural issues in the area. So I cross over because that open space is important to the city of Livermore. I do a lot of work with the elected officials as well as staff, developing regional policy that isn't necessarily bound by the jurisdictions. So because of that, I like to kind of keep my hands in the Livermore process in the same way that the folks in the city of Livermore like to keep their hands in the country process.
Great, thank you, Larry. And then I think we finally have Jim, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure. I've been a resident of Livermore now for about 35 years. Worked at the one of the labs for a couple decades. And more recently, I really haven't been that involved with these kind of community engagements before. But in the last few years, I've become very concerned about what I think are negative events occurring that are making the town not the kind of town that I wanted to move to when I came here. So that's why I'm really participating is I see issues and I'm trying to provide input to help direct it in what I hope is a better direction.
Great, thank you, Jim. All right, and thanks everyone for being willing to share. So we're going to kind of move into the next part of this sort of breakout room, which will be going through the questions. Again, we've got 4, and I believe Carrie is going to share her screen, and we'll be taking notes with the various sort of things that you all say. Again, our goal here is to collect information, and of course, we'll bring this back into kind of our visioning process. And so we'll start with the first question, and they do mirror generally what you saw in the previous questions through the kind of the polling. The first one's a little bit different.
Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, please.
Can you guys see the Google Doc right now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Carrie. All right, so the first one's a little bit different, and it's just kind of a recap. And so we'd like to understand, if you'd feel comfortable answering, what did you see that resonated with you from the large group poll about what you like about Livermore? What was missing? And if you kind of throw out some more information, kind of before we get into the next questions. This is just an opportunity to react to or add some commentary to anything that you saw in the poll. And so it'll be kind of an open forum. So whoever would like to start. Okay, I think GM, I saw your hand.
I was surprised, very surprised, to not see something about the airport expansion and the noise that's expected from that. Just a comment. I think the diversity and the differing opinions that I spoke about in my introduction to this breakout was reflected there as well.
And please, I think I saw, Bill, you'd raised your hand. And at this point, folks just kind of want to jump in. We can sort out, who, if a couple people talk over each other, but we'd love for it to be a flowing discussion, kind of open forum. So I think I did see your hand though, Bill, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, I tuned in late and I missed much of what you were referring to. But the part that I did get was too many generalizations and not enough specifics of what you would like to see 20, 25 years from now.
We're still working on the old issues, eh, Bill?
I'd like to add also that there were some mentions about open space, and I don't remember if conservation was in there or not, but some of the things that make Livermore unique that I hope we continue to focus on and not set aside are the importance of all the arroyos, the streams we have through Livermore, and maintaining the health of those, as well as the open space in general. We have a lot of parks, we have a lot of trails, and those need to be maintained. We're making advances with bike access around town, but there's more, I believe, needs to be done with that.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, that one of the things that's nice about Livermore is that there are these open spaces that, and one of the negatives that I've seen is Livermore is slowly encroaching into turning into, from the previous Placeworks report, people said they don't want it to become like Dublin, but even more like, if you want to talk about Hayward and so forth. My mother was born in the Bay Area and grew up here. And when she was young, there were individual cities around the Bay with big space in between them. And today it's just this sea of a city around the Bay. And these open spaces disappear if they're not protected. So I think that is an important thing that needs to be protected, that Livermore needs to prioritize to make sure the arroyos and the trails, not just that there is a trail between a bunch of buildings, but a trail with, trees and scenery.
And if I may add one more point to that, and it ties into the agricultural heritage of Livermore, excuse me. And I'm thinking specifically up here in the north side of 580, that somehow if there can be raising awareness of how unique, for example, the alkali ecosystem is that's up here, and the remaining dry ag component is very significant to the valley, to Livermore. So I think there needs to be more of a focus on maintaining those areas.
Another area, so getting off open space for a second, but another area that I think that resonated with me is trying to keep Livermore to keep its character. One of the other issues is I see the character changing. Kind of what I mentioned, it's going from the small town that we've had, and with the buildings downtown, with the construction, the housing is now extending. It's worse when you look at Dublin with all the hills disappearing with houses. I don't want to see that happen to Livermore. I want Livermore to, I understand growth is natural, but it needs to be controlled and planned.
Yeah, please go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so returning to the open space issues, the land surrounding Livermore are all zoned agriculture. And the nice thing about that is that it provides a remarkable diversity of potential uses. But like Bill was saying, there needs to be specificity regarding those uses, and more importantly, a pathway to implementation. Now, one of the failures of the general plan process is that quite often those plans won't be specific enough, or they won't point you in the right direction to develop programs and policies, or those programs and policies are never developed to implement the general plan. So it's remarkably important to see the general plan as a starting point. And if there's to be interest in those open space issues, engaging with Alameda County, the Agricultural Advisory, and more importantly, pre-existing plans, because there are pre-existing plans on the books now for multi-use trails, pathways along the road, preservation of the alkali sinks in North Livermore, agricultural enhancement. All of that is sitting in shelves right at this time, and it's just never been implemented. So it's one of the reasons why the agriculturists and the folks in town do need to coordinate on these issues. The folks in town are the clients, they're the market for agriculture. And if they want to support particular types of agriculture or agricultural land uses, they just need to get into it. So hopefully the general plan does have an agricultural element that's comprehensive.
Okay, yeah, we'll do Bill, and then after we'd like to maybe, of course, we can wrap up a little bit more, but we'd like to move on to question 2 as well. So Bill, if you don't mind on question 1.
Just to recognize that what Larry said recognizes that the population of this city is going to grow. Where do we put them? Do we move out toward the airport? Please, no. Do we move down into the wine area? Please, no. Maybe you have to go up North Livermore Avenue, after all, in order to fit these people in. I've got an awful lot of stuff that really doesn't relate to that, but let me leave it at that so you can go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see some of these questions are fairly similar. And so we definitely want to hear, all of your thoughts on each of these. But any last thoughts on question 1, which is anything that you saw that may have resonated for you about, those polling? Any last thoughts on?
Yeah, I'd like just a quickie.
Okay.
That Larry brought up there about the general plan needs more specificity. Excuse me. I tend to agree with that quite a bit, but I'd like to kind of twist that around a little bit and add, I'll be real frank with you all. Please don't think ill of me. The plan is not written very well. It lacks structure except for 14 elements. It confuses with circular reasoning the words policy, objectives, and goals, and 2 others that are in there somewhere. It needs a defined process for documentation of what we're talking about here in these various problems. And the policy should be set out not by the people like on the various committees, but policy should be established by the city council. That's their job if you read what the Charter of Livermore says. Of course, it'd be nice to think that we have input to that, but they have to get off their seats and establish the policy.
Yeah, I'll just chime in that I can't even say that word. Being specific is a critical thing, because if it's not specific, then it's going to be generic and open to interpretation, and people will mold it into whatever they want it to have said. So if it's not specific, it's just going to, it's not necessarily going to do what you want it to be.
Great. We do appreciate everyone. We've got a good list going for question 1. And of course, if we have any time at the end, we can always circle back. But if we could, let's move on to question 2, which is a little bit broader. And this is, what is your vision for Livermore in 2045? So anybody that would love to jump in, please go ahead.
Well, still be a city that people want to be a member of. There's inviting things about Livermore, and hopefully the vision has those inviting things still there and still inviting.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, that we will have continued to make reasons for people to come downtown with restaurants and shopping and the Bankhead and Spark and others, with shaded parks and benches, because there's going to be more older people in town then than you think there might be. I would like to say that there's continued support for the arts, visual and performing, with some city financial help and a spirit of enthusiasm and encouragement. We don't always see that. and help local wineries, especially the small ones, get noticed. And I got another one here that'll really land on you later. And a bunch of stuff, but also to find a new but fair way to pay for all of this, because it is not going to be cheap. And I really think that a generation from now, you're going to really wish you'd brought Bart downtown to the transit center.
I'd like to be alive in 2045.
I will not be.
It's questionable on this side, Bill.
I hope everyone's alive on by that date.
I'd also like to add that it continues to be a city that's welcoming and appeals to families, especially families with young children, with concern over housing costs and, you know, the great American dream of owning your home and that sort of thing it's a big concern for younger people. And I hope Livermore can do something to ensure that that demographic has the ability to own a home, or at least have some kind of a home they can call their own.
If I may add there, not only does that apply to young families, I think there's several elements in the community that are priced out of having family homes that they own because of their ethnicity. And I think we have to address that. That's how you keep it. One of the ways you keep a dynamic community is to have it ethnically diverse.
And just, again, this is what's your vision for Livermore in 2045. And so, looking for thoughts on, looking out to that horizon, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? And we've got some great answers so far.
Well, it's also going to need to probably address its transportation issues, because as it is, there are certain areas where transportation is definitely problematic. And in 2045, as I think Bill mentioned, right now there's on the order of 90,000 people. I don't know what it's going to be in 25 years, but it's going to be more than 90,000. They're making East Avenue smaller. People, either they're going to be not driving as much as they are, or they're going to have to be finding other ways of getting around, or finding ways of not having to get around. But the issue of transportation is going to become a very important thing that I think Livermore's vision needs to look at and figure out.
Then I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that agriculture becomes recognized as a peri-urban activity, and there is definition for peri-urban that'll come forward later. That being said, the jurisdictional lines should be blurred regarding agricultural activity, and urban agriculture is on the rise in the area. It's recognized as an answer to some of the human needs of the Tri-Valley, and rural agriculturists are joining in with that movement and collaborating across the jurisdictional lines.
Larry, that last comment was about urban agriculture.
Urban agriculture and peri-urban agriculture.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments on your vision for Livermore and how it again should feel or look in 2045?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that transportation move away from being automobile focused, whether it's e-vehicle or carbon vehicle.
Yeah, Bill, please.
At the risk of being snarky, do we think we can solve this legacy problem before 2045?
I think that, are you talking about transportation, Bill?
No, I'm talking about the huge unfinished apartment complex on the growth site. It's not the city's issue really, but
Well,
heavens.
that was one of the things I spoke up. I meant when I said about the conflict within the community earlier. Yeah, it'll probably get solved by 2045. I wouldn't be able to guess what the result is, though.
Yeah, I think legacy should have a capital L.
And you're referring to the project that's just to the west on L Street, the former Growth Brothers project, correct?
Right.
Yeah, the bankruptcy court is approving a new contractor, so it actually should start moving relatively soon again.
All right. Any last comments on your vision for Livermore in 2045? And of course, if we have time at the end, we can certainly circle back to any of these if needed.
Group 4, you guys are doing great. I really appreciated you letting me eavesdrop a little bit. This is awesome conversation. Thank you all for everything you're contributing. I'm going to keep bouncing around and listen in on some other rooms too, but Jake and Carrie, I will leave you in Jake and Carrie's capable hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so question number 3. So again, this kind of mirrors one of the sort of polling questions in some ways. And so it's, what principles do you think are important for the city to consider as they update the general plan and make decisions on Livermore's future? Yeah, please, GM, go ahead.
To me, the number one most important principle is for the city council to obtain general consensus on everything that they do, as far as the plan goes and any actions that fall out from that. If you don't have consensus, you're going to create divergence and bad feelings and whatever you see out nowadays.
Consensus by the city council or amongst the citizens?
Consensus between the council and the community in general.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't very clear about that.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, that the decisions the city makes needs to be in support of the entire community, not just select groups. Otherwise, you drive the city apart. And I think that's part of what's currently happening and why we're currently having problems, is because whether it is or not, it at least is perceived as certain groups are getting preference over other groups, and decisions are being made for those groups over the general community. And that's something the city really needs to figure out how to avoid.
And if I may add to that, there's also groups that don't even have input that really need input.
Yeah, please, Bill.
I would like to second Patty's notions and some of the others that I've heard, that we need, the city needs to be conscious of the fact that good high diversity is really important. If your children grow up in a diverse community, they're going to be much, much better equipped to deal with the world. The city should keep that in mind when they're making decisions.
Have any of your thoughts on any principles? I mean, and these could be large or small. I mean, everything from innovation to resiliency, prosperity. We've touched on diversity, sustainability. There's a whole host of things. And again, we've got a great list going. But any other thoughts on kind of an overarching principle that may?
I believe a principle of the city should be to expand scoping when projects are considered. And there's a lot of conflict at the end of the process. Those conflicts should be resolved at the beginning of the process.
Now, when you say scoping, is that sort of,
That's a California Environmental Quality Act requirement. It's the first stage where you go out and get public opinion. And in reality, it can be extended pretty broad. Things like architectural renderings, traffic flow, the environmental inspection, all that can be laid out pretty early in the project so that it doesn't become an issue that warrants litigation at the end of the process.
Oh. You wouldn't have anything specific in mind, would you?
Well, I read the editorials.
I'd like to add in also, in the context of climate change and quality of life, principles associated with this, the importance and the significance of managing natural resources in and around the city, conservation measures, things like that.
Yeah, a principle regarding climate change that I think is important is to recognize that it is in fact a crisis and it's an emergency now.
Another general principle I think the city needs to keep in mind is the fact that, and this is not unique to Livermore, but small businesses really are being decimated, not just by the pandemic, but in general. The Walmarts and Targets are killing small businesses and other box stores. And it's really, our downtown, when I moved here 30 plus years ago, there were lots of stores downtown. Now there's some stores, but mostly restaurants downtown. And I think that's a trend that is unfortunate. And it would be nice if the city can try to do something in order to keep small businesses, small non-restaurant businesses alive.
So just checking in on the time for everybody. We've got a little bit less than 30 minutes, so we're doing great on timing here. We can sort of wrap up on question 3. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on the principles you think are important? Again, could be small things, could be large things. Preparedness, foresight, anything that we haven't discussed. We've got some great ones: conservation, diversity, consensus, small business.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to build on some comments that have been made and suggest that the principle of being courteous start to be considered in the process in Livermore. And as a citizen responsibility, staff and the elected officials do a remarkable job of being courteous.
I'd like to see the council and the city in general think of reasons why people would want to live in Livermore. The population is going to grow regardless, but why would you come here to live? Well, one of the things that we have here that's really, really pretty good are the arts, the visual and performing arts. Okay, granted, that's kind of where I spend a lot of my time. If the city can somehow bend over backwards and grit their teeth and give a little bit of financial help, that would be very helpful, because if you can build these, you have something that is very attractive in this community. And I would urge that that be part of it.
Yeah, essentially, partially to build upon what Bill said, what the city envisions is what will become in place, and that is what will dictate who is drawn to the city. So essentially, they're going to build the map of who the city is going to be in terms of their population.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way, but Yeah, that, yeah,
Yeah, basically, if you build it, they will come concept. Whatever they build, they're going to be essentially dictating the core group that's going to be attracted to the city.
and if you don't build it, they will either not come or they'll come and leave.
If I may, I think we should, or the council, the city in general, should consider what's possible to do and what's not possible to do. Because you can't really do everything. No project, whether you have infinite time or not, can you get everything done?
Plus, all takes money.
That's the concern. Well, one of them anyway.
Absolutely. Okay. We could move on to question 4 unless anybody has anything burning they'd like to. Oh, please. Yeah.
Larry has one more. I think it should be noted that the standards of performance in the agricultural community haven't stayed consistent with the levels of growth or the economic performance of the urban community. And so bringing consistency between the sustainability and economic viability of the open space lands and agriculture, I think should be a principle that's supported by the general plan.
Great. Yeah, thanks everyone. Again, we've got some great lists here so far. And so question 4, again, is similar to what you had heard. This is, what key issues should the general plan address? And so, again, it's a little bit similar, kind of maybe a little bit more micro than the full, sort of principle, maybe a particular issue that you're concerned about. It could be anything from, who knows, some sort of very small part of the city to something big. So does anybody want to kind of jump in on question 4 to start us off?
I think public safety is a key issue across the board.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's issues have happened downtown. Some of the comments before in the beginning portion of the open meeting, people brought up how the gangs are now more prevalent. It's not being helped by groups that are promoting the disrespecting of the police. It's making the police's job much, much harder. That's definitely an area that I see as a significant concern.
On the general level, I would again suggest that key issue in the general plan should be what would attract people and keep them here in Livermore. And we've touched on a lot of those items of what might work. Has anybody touched on schools?
I was just thinking that.
I don't think we've heard that one yet.
I'm not qualified. All my kids have been many decades gone from schools.
My wife and I own bonds for the Livermore Joint Unified School District, so we're supporting the darn schools, I'll tell you that.
Okay, what do you suggest? What might be a key issue that you would want to have in the general plan?
It's really one-sided, and I got blinders on, I admit, before I speak.
That's okay. What's your side?
I think the teachers need to be upgraded. I think too many of them are jaded and they've been teaching too long and they're set in their ways. And they're not effectively identifying with the generation who says they change.
I think they're also demoralized.
Oh,
Right.
big time, big time.
Yeah, they're not paid enough, and that's a state Proposition 13 issue. You know, it's I've known teachers and seen them struggle, and they spend their own money for school supplies. I mean, it's discouraging for me to see them struggle so hard to be good teachers. But that being said, I think housing is an issue. It's one of those issues that should be addressed right up front, and the diversity of housing needed for the various income levels has been neglected in Livermore and should be put up front in the general plan. Climate crisis, again, you know, that'll probably be an open space issue, but it now extends to every aspect of planning, or it should reasonably, because by 2045, we may be in some sort of dystopic society. And then the other issue is collaboration, again, across jurisdictional boundaries for ag and open space enhancement.
When I first moved to town, I was told that there was an untapped reservoir of potential wonderful teachers because they were the spouses of the laboratory employees, very bright men and women who married very bright spouses. Did ever this happen? I don't know, because
no, those spouses produced children that became engineers and researchers.
The teachers that my wife and I know actually are spouses of technical individuals that may or may not work at the lab or some other engineering type occupation or scientific type occupation. So
are they the ones that need to be upgraded?
Essentially, yes, because a teacher's salary is not a living wage. So they need a spouse to actually support them.
Oh, okay. So you meant upgraded in money, not necessarily in qualifications.
Are you asking me, Bill?
Yes.
I meant both, actually. And probably there's a third and a fourth out there, but I haven't given it a lot of depth and thought.
Yeah, and
It's probably both, because right now you're getting what you pay for.
Yeah.
and
Boy,
so
sure came cheap.
transportation and alternative vehicle lanes, whether they be bicycles or neighborhood electrical vehicles. I think they're also called slow speed electrical vehicles. I think should be accounted for. And then obviously public transit.
Would anyone like to elaborate any further on any of these points in number 4? You know, we've got public safety, we've got, you know, I think we've discussed in decent amount of schools, we've got housing, climate crisis, you know, transportation, collaboration, public transit. Anyone want to elaborate on any of those pieces or suggest maybe some new ones for issues that general plan should address?
Well, the housing's a biggie here. And that, should the general plan allow multifamily, multi-housing on a single family lot?
Well, thanks to SB 9 and 10, I don't think there's now any legal way of stopping it. The developers can now come in, tear down a house and build an apartment complex, and legally the city has no ability of objecting.
Is that a good thing or not when you need more housing?
If they want to tear down the house next to Gavin Newsom's and put up an apartment complex, I think it's a good thing. But in general, taking the ability of a city controlling construction in its own city limits, I think is a bad thing.
So I'm curious as to what the group thinks about tourism, both in the city and in the rural environment. The folks in the hospitality industries would like to see what they call heads in beds on the weekends.
Is there anybody here from Visit Tri-Valley, for example, who can comment on this?
I work with them, and you know, they want to see tourism in both in Livermore, or not just Livermore, but Pleasanton and Danville and, you know, Dublin. They want to see it in the rural countryside as well, and are mystified as to why there isn't a resort in South Livermore.
I was going to say, I think it's something that they've been chasing after, and so far it's been elusive.
Yeah, I think you answered your own question there. There's no resort in South Livermore or anywhere else.
Yeah, that's been answered exactly the same by many of the people that are struggling to keep their wineries going in South Livermore. They need that resort.
I support the wineries.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, we need to put you on a horse, and then you'll be supporting my industry.
Well, I do that through the world's best and most beautiful German Shepherd dog, my friend.
Okay.
He had another thought.
And I grew up in Arizona, so I've been known to ride a horse too, by God.
When you're talking about resort, are you thinking of something bigger and better than, say, Purple Orchid?
Yeah, even Mr. Eddie will comment on the fact that he's not allowed enough rooms to have a sustainable business there. And so he's the owner operator. And at times, because of restrictions on the number of rooms he can have, he is actually changing the beds. And I mean, he doesn't mind doing it. He recognizes it's the job of a boss. On the other hand, it reflects some shortcomings of tourism policy in South Livermore.
Would that not be a seasonal thing that would deter somebody from making the investment?
No, it's actually, this is a climate that encourages, and a location that encourages year-round tourism. The problems that are in place have to do with the interpretation of a measure that was passed 20 years ago, Measure D. And so that is something that's in conflict. It's been in conflict for quite some time, actually for 20 years. And, you know, the issues need to be resolved if tourism is important to the people of Livermore.
And Patty, I think, did you have something to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I was thinking in past years, it seemed like the city of Livermore was much more supportive, almost acting like a facilitator in a way when it came to volunteerism. And that seems to have kind of waned a little bit over the years. And in some of these other issues we see with the shortfalls in the schools, well, a lot of that is that there are too few teachers. They could use some help with people, especially the elderly or older people, or people who have special needs that have homes that are having a hard time keeping them up. You know, volunteers might be able to help do minor maintenance. But there used to be and I think Livermore is still known for its high level of volunteerism. But again, over the years, I see it somewhat reduced. I'd like to see that brought back up again, community-wide.
And just for clarification on that, Patty, is that, you know, kind of volunteering with one another, or some larger sort of, you know, public kind of works project, or what, in what ways were you thinking in terms of volunteering?
Yeah, it's basically all encompassing. I know that there are a lot of organizations in Livermore that do volunteer work, but the city used to have kind of and I can't remember the name of it, but they had an association, or could reference you to a larger volunteer group. So as different projects came in, or organizations came in and were looking for volunteers, or even if the city needed volunteers for specific projects, people could go to this website and, you know, and see what was out there and what they might be able to help with.
Yeah, there was such a thing for sure before COVID.
Right.
I'm involved with the library, and the library also facilitated volunteering.
But I just think that if there could be a resurgence of that interest and motivation for people to volunteer, I think that helps a lot with things like some of these public safety issues. It brings people back to a sense of community and people being neighbors, even if you don't live right next door to them. So anyway.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good idea. And, you know, what popped into my mind is the fact that already like the churches, especially the larger churches, are collaborating on volunteer efforts and developing homeless plans and tiny home plans and all those plans. I've been involved with them in a certain sense regarding their agricultural activities. And all of those plans call for engagement of community members. But the big churches aren't pushy about it. Now, the library obviously can always use volunteers. Schools can always use volunteers. Linking agricultural activities to school programs would require volunteers. I think that justifies a volunteer center for Livermore that aggregates those potential opportunities for community building, just like Patty's recommended. I think that's a remarkably good suggestion. Not sure where it fits into the elements of the general plan, but that's the job of the experts to get it front and forward. So I'd really push for that, Patty. That's just great.
Yeah, I think she's basically bringing up an issue in society in general,
Right.
where we have shifted from, you know, as Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country kind of philosophy. We've shifted from a society where people want to help their community to one where they just look to their community to see how the community can help them.
Yeah, I definitely see a reduction in altruism and empathy.
Right.
I guess I don't, but maybe I'm lucky in the organizations that I'm part of.
So we've got a little bit less than 10 minutes. We're gonna kind of wrap up by 8:20. We've still got a couple things to do. I'd like to still kind of go through and summarize what we've discussed. And we'd still need to pick a spokesperson if we could before we head back to the main group. And the responsibility of the spokesperson would be about, you know, give a 1 to 2 minute summary of kind of what we discussed. So I think first we'll go ahead and just kind of summarize, if we could, through each of these in general terms. So again, the first question is kind of what resonated with you all about the large group poll. We had, you know, and again, I'm not going to necessarily hit every bullet point, but we've got a lot of great discussion here. But you know, we talked about the airport expansion, generalization, you know, too much generalization. We talked about, you know, the importance of open space, the arroyos, you know, including the alkali sink area. We talked about, you know, surrounding lands, agriculture, considering, you know, maybe where the population of the city might grow. You know, we even talked about the structure of the general plan, and again, sort of being specific. So that's kind of the summary of question 1 there. And then if we could, awesome, thanks, Carrie. Go to question 2. What's your vision for Livermore in 2045? Again, and a great list. We talked about the city being inviting. We talked about making, you know, a reason for people to come downtown or come to the city. You know, we talked about parks. We talked about arts. Being welcoming, you know, appealing to families, appealing to people of different demographics, making sure that we've got affordable housing, again, for others maybe of different demographics as well. We talked about transportation, you know, the East Avenue in particular, agriculture, again, urban agriculture and various types of different agriculture. And we also talked about, you know, electric kind of transportation, and the legacy project as well, which maybe speaks to kind of the larger questions about housing or unfinished housing. So that's kind of the summary for question 2. Awesome, thanks, Carrie. Question 3 is, what principles do you think are important for the city to consider as we update the general plan and make decisions for Livermore's future?
This is Jake. Let's see here. Oh, I think we did.
Yeah, I think Jake went away.
Hopefully he'll come back. But yeah, he was just in the middle of summarizing the guiding principles, and we heard consensus, diversity, conservation, being courteous. You know, you could say climate change could be sustainability, possible if you wanted to say it succinctly. And then the key issues that we heard: public safety, schools, housing, the climate, public transit, interjurisdictional collaboration, tourism, and volunteering. So those are some of the highlights. But I do think we need to quickly select a volunteer who can just summarize our input in about 1 to 2 minutes. Do we have any?
I nominate Larry.
Yeah,
No. I'm a spontaneous conference room guy. I fall apart with communications.
I was going to say the same thing because I think you got some unique viewpoints there, Larry. I had never thought about the ag aspect.
I am absolutely certain that I do not handle communications well. So
All right.
I'm absolutely certain of it.
So that leaves Bill, George, or Patty. Or
I'll take
Jeff.
myself out of the race. I don't have a firm enough grasp.
All right.
That's why Jake left us. He knew we were going to dump on him.
No, I made it back. I am so sorry, buddy.
No worries.
Okay, while you were gone, Jake, we appointed you our communicator.
Jake can't do it. So by process of elimination, we're to George, I think.
Oh, no. Again, I do apologize. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened to my computer here. I just got fed up with the conversation. No.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll cost you.
I'm just kidding.
But we're going to be shot back to the main room soon, so we do need to select a person.
Are you going to have this up in front so that I can use it as a reference?
Yes, I will make sure that Tarina, I think, will share her screen, George. But if not, then I can send you a message of some of the highlights through the Zoom chat.
Yeah. Well, if I forget something, you all jump in.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
Yeah, I don't know what your views are, but I didn't see any choice in the matter. You all spoke up before I did.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for doing that. Well, I was gone.
I don't thank them.
No, thanks, Carrie.
Sure.
And I guess we have just a couple minutes. Any last thoughts before we go back into the main room?
Yeah, I need another glass of wine.
How is this going to be presented? These questions, so that I can refer to them.